The studio lights gleamed like diamonds, perfectly aligned across the stage of the late-night hour with Colbert. The audience buzzed with energy, laughter, claps, and murmurs filled the air. The night's headline guest was none other than Denzel Washington, the living legend himself. He entered with that effortless stride, calm, charismatic, confident, and the crowd erupted into applause. For the first few minutes, everything seemed flawless. The questions were light, the mood warm, and Denzel's smile lit up the room. He talked about his new film, a story about redemption and sacrifice, and the audience hung on every word. Colbert kept his signature humor rolling, teasing, joking, and letting Denzel lead the tempo. But then, something shifted. Colbert leaned forward, flashing that mischievous smirk. "You've always been known for your intensity, Denzel," he said, voice light but sharp. "Ever thought maybe that intensity crosses the line sometimes, maybe even off-screen?" The audience laughed softly, thinking it was part of the bit. But Denzel didn't laugh. His expression didn't change immediately, but a subtle tension crept into his face. His jaw set. His eyes, those sharp, deliberate eyes, fixed on Colbert like a spotlight cutting through the air. "What do you mean by that, Stephen?" Denzel asked, his voice steady but edged. Colbert chuckled. "Oh, come on, those stories that pop up online. You're a tough guy on set, perfectionist, hard to work with sometimes. Just asking if there's truth to that." The audience murmured again, this time uncertain whether to laugh or hold their breath. Denzel leaned back in his chair, pausing before he spoke. "You see, that's the problem with interviews nowadays," he said slowly. "People don't ask about the work. They ask about the gossip." Colbert raised an eyebrow. "It's not gossip if people are saying it themselves." The tone shifted. The warmth was gone now, replaced by an uncomfortable heat. The crew behind the cameras exchanged glances. Denzel leaned forward, his presence suddenly dominating the set. "Stephen," he said, voice lower, firmer. "I've been in this business longer than most of the people writing those stories have been alive. I've given everything to my craft. So when someone brings rumors onto this stage, my stage, I don't find it funny." The crowd went silent. Even Colbert looked slightly taken aback. He tried to recover with a laugh. "Hey, come on, no offense meant. We're just having fun here." Denzel didn't blink. "Fun at my expense?" For a few seconds, the tension was almost unbearable. The camera operators hesitated, unsure if they should keep rolling or cut to commercial. One producer gestured nervously behind the scenes, whispering into a headset. Colbert cleared his throat and tried to pivot. Okay, fair enough. Let's talk about the movie again." But Denzel wasn't done. "No, let's talk about this. You invited me here to discuss my work, my story, my film, not to sit here and defend myself like a headline. You see, that's the problem with modern media. Everything's a setup. You twist words, you stir the pot, and then you call it entertainment." The audience gasped. A single camera light flickered red, the one feeding the live broadcast. Millions watching at home saw the shift in real time. Denzel Washington, controlled and calm, now visibly irritated, refusing to play along. Colbert forced a tight smile. "Denzel, you're taking this a little out of context?" Denzel interrupted, voice rising slightly. "That's what you'll say later, right?" The tension broke into nervous laughter from the audience. Colbert attempted to regain control. "Look, I didn't mean anything by it, my friend." But Denzel shook his head, leaned forward, and spoke directly into the camera. "If you want to know who I am, watch the work. Don't listen to the noise." Then, in one sharp motion, he removed his microphone clip and placed it on the desk. The sound technician froze. The audience was dead silent. Colbert's expression turned uncertain, caught between shock and disbelief. "Are you serious?" he asked softly. Denzel stood up, buttoned his jacket, and gave the audience a brief nod. "I think we're done here." And with that, he turned and walked off the stage. The audience erupted into mixed reactions, some cheering, some whispering in shock, others holding up phones, recording every step. The camera zoomed awkwardly on Colbert, who sat there for a long second speechless before finally saying, "Well, That happened. The crowd laughed nervously again, unsure whether it was all a setup or the most real moment they'd seen on live TV in years. Behind the stage, producers scrambled. Assistants chased after Denzel, trying to convince him to come back. The control room was chaos, alarms, voices, red blinking lights, and one question looping in everyone's mind. Was that real, or the greatest live meltdown ever broadcast? As the applause faded and the red "Live" sign finally dimmed, the studio erupted into controlled chaos. Producers rushed out from behind the curtains, their headsets crackling with overlapping voices. The audience was still buzzing, half believing they'd just witnessed a scripted moment, the other half certain they'd seen something raw and real. Backstage, Denzel walked fast, his steps echoing against the hallway floor. He didn't look at anyone, not the assistants trying to hand him his coat, not the PR manager jogging behind him whispering, "Mr. Washington, please, can we talk for just a second?" He stopped only once, at the corner where the hallway split toward the exit. His hands were clenched, but his expression wasn't fury. It was disappointment. This wasn't supposed to be another circus, he said under his breath. Meanwhile, inside the studio, Colbert sat at the desk, trying to recover the rhythm. The audience had no idea whether to clap or stay quiet. He turned to the camera and forced a tight laugh. "Well," he said, adjusting his tie, "you don't see that every night on CBS." The control room erupted with mixed reactions. One director yelled, "Cut to commercial, now!" Another producer argued, "No, keep it rolling. This is gold." The show cut abruptly to an ad break, but online it was already too late. Clips were flooding social media, shaky phone recordings, half a dozen camera angles, captions like "Denzel Washington walks off Colbert live." And tense moment caught on air. Within minutes, hashtags were trending. People were taking sides. Some defended Denzel for standing his ground. Others mocked him for overreacting. Backstage, Denzel's manager, Lisa, finally caught up. "You know this is going to blow up, right?" she said, slightly out of breath. Denzel didn't answer. He leaned against a wall, eyes closed. "They invited me to talk about my work, Lisa, not to turn it into a fight." Lisa sighed. "That's what late-night shows do. They stir the pot. You've been in this long enough to know that." He opened his eyes. Calm now. "Yeah," he said quietly, "but not like this." He looked toward the stage doors where muffled laughter from the resumed show drifted through. "They want the clip, not the conversation." Lisa handed him her phone, the screen already glowing with notifications. "It's everywhere. TMZ, Variety, even Twitter's losing it." He stared at the screen for a moment, scrolling through comments, reactions, theories. Some called him a hero. Others said he couldn't take a joke. Then he did something no one expected and he smiled. A slow, deliberate smile that said he'd seen all this before. "Let them talk," he said, handing the phone back. "I said what I meant." Meanwhile, inside the green room, two interns whispered near the monitors. One said, "You think he's going to come back for the post-show photo?" The other shook his head. "Not a chance. He's done." Colbert was finishing his next segment, but his usual confidence was cracked. Every line he read felt forced. The laughter from the audience was thinner, less sure. Between takes, he turned to his producer. "Did I push it too far?" The producer hesitated. "You were just doing your thing, Stephen." Colbert sighed. "Yeah, but sometimes my thing costs too much." By the time the show wrapped, Denzel was already gone, escorted quietly through a side exit. The driver waiting outside opened the car door, but Denzel paused before getting in. Across the street, a few fans had gathered, phones raised, shouting his name. He waved briefly, then got in without saying a word. Inside the car, the city lights blurred against the windows. Lisa sat beside him, scrolling through more notifications. "There's already talk that this was staged," she said. Denzel chuckled softly. If only they knew how real that was. He leaned his head back, staring at the ceiling. "They wanted drama, now they've got it." Lisa looked at him carefully. "So what's next?" He turned his gaze toward the window again. "Nothing. I'll let the noise burn itself out." But even as he said that, deep down he knew the storm had only just begun. Producers, media outlets, bloggers, they dissect every word, every look, every breath. Some would spin it as ego. Others would call it truth. In the digital world, facts didn't matter anymore, only moments did. And tonight he had just given them the biggest one of the year. The car turned a corner, the glow of the studio fading behind him. Denzel looked at his reflection in the glass. Calm now, collected but still burning inside. He muttered to himself, almost too softly for Lisa to hear. They wanted a headline. I gave them a lesson. By the next morning, every newsfeed, social platform, and entertainment blog had exploded with the same headline. The clip had racked up millions of views overnight. Reaction videos, fan debates, slow-motion breakdowns. The internet had dissected every gesture, every word, every expression. In some corners, Denzel was being hailed as a man who stood up for his dignity. In others, he was being mocked for not being able to take a joke. Memes were spreading faster than the truth could catch up. Inside his home office, Denzel sat at a wide oak desk, the morning sunlight spilling across a stack of unopened scripts. His phone buzzed nonstop, calls from publicists, directors, and talk show producers all wanting a comment. He ignored them all. Across from him, Lisa scrolled through her laptop, reading aloud. CNN's calling it the most uncomfortable talk show moment of the decade. The Guardian says you redefined live TV tension. Twitter's split down the middle. Half think you were right, half think you were dramatic. Denzel didn't react. He just sipped his coffee, eyes fixed on the muted TV screen across the room, replaying the moment over and over again. Colbert's voice echoed faintly from the broadcast. I think we just had a misunderstanding. Denzel's a great guy. I hope we can clear the air. Lisa looked up. He's already doing damage control. Denzel smirked. Of course he is. He's got a show to protect. Lisa hesitated. And what about you? He leaned back, fingers steepled. I've got a name to protect. By noon, reporters were stationed outside his gate. Camera flashes, drones, microphones. A circus had formed overnight. Every question sounded the same. Denzel, are you and Colbert still friends? Was it staged? Do you regret walking out? His security team kept them back, but the noise seeped through the walls like static. Meanwhile, in a sleek Manhattan office tower, Colbert's production team was in crisis mode. The clip had broken every view record for the show, but sponsors were uneasy, and the network's PR division wanted an explanation. Should we invite him back for an apology? One producer suggested. Colbert rubbed his temples. He's not coming back. You saw that look in his eyes. He's done with me. Another voice chimed in. But the ratings, I don't care about the ratings. Colbert snapped, surprising everyone. That man's a legend. I pushed too hard. The room fell silent. For a brief moment, the host who made his career out of teasing people sounded remorseful. By late afternoon, Denzel's phone buzzed again, this time a message from a private number. Just 3 words. You handled it right. He smiled slightly. It was from an old friend, a director he deeply respected. Lisa looked at him. So what now? Do we issue a statement? Maybe an interview with someone you trust? Denzel shook his head. No, let them talk. The more I speak, the less they'll listen. He stood, walking toward the window where city lights were beginning to flicker in the distance. People forget interviews, he said quietly. They remember moments, Lisa frowned. You're okay with being the headline? He turned to her. If the headline teaches them something, yeah. That evening, the clip played again, this time on Late Night Recap Live, a show known for turning celebrity drama into comedy. They played the footage in slow motion, added dramatic sound effects, and made jokes about Denzel storming out with Oscar-worthy timing. The studio audience laughed, but the laughter didn't land the same way it used to. Social media was already pushing back. Fans were defending him, calling out talk shows for disrespecting artists. The tide was turning. One viral comment read, "They poked at a man who built his career on respect, and he reminded them what that looks like." Within hours, it had been retweeted 100,000 times. As the night settled, Denzel sat alone in his study, watching the city glow through the window. The world outside was noisy, but in that room, there was peace. He opened a small leather notebook, the one he always carried for ideas, and wrote a single line. Silence has a longer echo than shouting. He closed it, exhaled deeply, and smiled. The storm outside was still raging, but inside, he had already found calm. The morning after the viral clip hit the internet, The world felt like it had split in two. Every newsfeed, every entertainment blog, every social media platform was flooded with the same headline. For some, it was comedic gold. For others, it was a lesson in boundaries and respect. For Denzel, it was a reminder of the power of presence and the weight of silence. At his Manhattan apartment, he sat in the corner of his living room, legs crossed, eyes focused on the tiny glowing screen of his tablet. The video played again and again, this time with millions of new views, comments pouring in from every corner of the globe. Some praised him for taking a stand. Others criticized him for being too intense. Lisa, his manager, sat across from him, laptop open. She looked up, her expression a mix of concern and excitement. "You've got 10 offers for interviews, 15 think pieces, and at least 5 morning shows asking for a comment. They want your side of the story, Denzel." He shook his head slowly. "I don't need to comment. They already know the story, and if they don't, they'll interpret it anyway." Lisa leaned back in her chair. "But what about Colbert? The network's calling. They want to schedule a meeting, to clear the air, maybe even get you back on the show." Denzel paused, staring out the window at the city below. He could see the lights reflecting off the skyscrapers, the faint flicker of late-night neon, and the hum of life moving on as though nothing had happened. "Let them call," he said finally. "I'll decide if I answer." Across town, Colbert was pacing in his office, the energy from the previous night still lingering like a stubborn shadow. His team had already drafted multiple apology scripts, PR statements, and social media posts. He wasn't just thinking about ratings anymore. He was thinking about respect. One producer said, "Steven, people are divided. Half think you went too far, half think it was entertaining. But your career could benefit if you make amends." Colbert rubbed his forehead. "I know, I didn't expect him to walk out like that." "Not on me," the producer nodded. "He didn't walk out on you. He walked out on the setup. On the manipulation." Colbert exhaled sharply. "Yeah, maybe I deserved that." By the afternoon, the media frenzy had reached a boiling point. Fans were creating reaction videos, editing the walkout with dramatic music, and sharing compilations of Denzel's every look and gesture. Influencers debated endlessly on TikTok and Instagram Live. Some even posted side-by-side comparisons of before the storm and after the storm, analyzing micro-expressions, hand gestures, and body language. In the middle of this chaos, Denzel made a rare decision. He agreed to a private meeting with the network executives. No cameras, no audience, just a quiet room and a chance to address the aftermath directly. Lisa drove him across the city, the car moving silently through the streets. "Remember," she said, "you're not apologizing. You're just telling your side. Keep it calm. Keep it honest." Denzel nodded. "I don't need to defend myself. I need them to understand respect is non-negotiable." Inside the conference room, the network executives greeted him with polite smiles. Colbert was there too, looking slightly tense, his usual charm replaced by sincerity. "Denzel," Colbert began carefully, "I want to apologize. I misjudged the situation last night. I pushed too far." Denzel leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "You misjudged the setup," he said calmly. "Interviews are meant to illuminate, not humiliate." There was a long pause. The executives exchanged nervous glances. Then Denzel continued, voice steady. "I'm not angry. I'm disappointed, and I want to make sure this doesn't happen again for anyone." Colbert nodded, visibly humbled. "I understand. I respect that." The room relaxed slightly, the tension easing. While the cameras weren't rolling, the moment was more significant than any broadcast could capture. It wasn't a showbiz reconciliation. It was a lesson in boundaries, respect, and integrity. After leaving the meeting, Denzel stepped outside into the crisp evening air. Lisa followed, glancing at him. "So, do you go back on the show?" He shook his head, a small smile forming. "Not yet. Maybe later, but only if it's on my terms. For now, I'll let the story speak for itself." Back in the city, the social media storm had evolved. Discussions shifted from drama to empowerment. Fans praised Denzel's courage, talking about standing up for oneself, the importance of personal boundaries, and how public figures can teach lessons even without words. Hashtags like "calm respect boundaries" and "Denzel stand strong" began trending. In his apartment later, Denzel watched the city lights twinkle and reflected on the storm he'd left behind. The viral moment, the headlines, the chaos, all of it was fleeting. But the respect he demanded, the integrity he upheld, that was permanent. And in that quiet reflection, he realized something crucial. Walking out didn't make him weak. Standing firm made him unforgettable. Days had passed since the now legendary live walkout, and the world hadn't stopped talking. Social media feeds were overflowing with reactions, memes, opinion threads, reaction videos, slow-motion analyses of every expression, every gesture. Yet among all the noise, a clear pattern emerged. The public was beginning to admire Denzel not for the controversy, but for his unwavering integrity. In a quiet Manhattan loft, Denzel sat at a polished wooden desk, a cup of coffee in hand. The city hummed beneath the window, indifferent to the storm he'd created. Lisa, his manager, scrolled through a flurry of notifications on her tablet. "Look at this," she said, pointing. "Articles calling you a masterclass in composure, a lesson in personal boundaries, even the man who redefined live TV drama. The audience is responding to your courage, not the chaos." Denzel smiled faintly, leaning back. "They always notice authenticity eventually. The ones who don't, let them be distracted." Meanwhile, the network had sent a formal note, acknowledging the tension of the previous interview and expressing respect for how Denzel handled the situation. Colbert himself had released a statement. "I underestimated the weight of words and the power of presence." Denzel reminded us that honesty and dignity are always in style. It wasn't a reconciliation in the dramatic sense. It was a quiet acknowledgement. And that, to Denzel, was enough. The fallout from the incident had ripple effects far beyond the talk show stage. Other celebrities and public figures began citing Denzel's actions as an example of standing firm under pressure. Podcasts dissected the moment not as scandal, but as a study in courage, restraint, and poise. Even brands and collaborators reached out, drawn to the clarity and integrity he displayed. He began receiving offers, not just for interviews, but for projects, charitable initiatives, and creative ventures. People wanted to work with someone who commanded respect without raising his voice. Yet Denzel remained grounded. He spent his days writing, reflecting, and preparing for the next film project. He made a point not to chase headlines, and instead he let the story speak for itself. Every viral clip, every article only reinforced the image he had always cultivated, a man of skill, presence, and principle. One evening he received a private message from Colbert. Simple, concise, and sincere. "Thank you for reminding me and everyone watching that respect is earned, not assumed. I hope we can do a proper interview someday." Denzel read it, considered it, then typed back a short reply. "Respect is mutual. When the time is right, no fanfare, no dramatics, just acknowledgement." By the following week, Denzel attended a small, intimate panel discussion at a film festival. The topic wasn't the viral clip, but professionalism, artistry, and integrity in the entertainment industry. As he spoke, references to the walkout inevitably arose. Instead of shying away, he addressed it candidly. "People see moments," he said, "but rarely do they see the preparation, the intention, and the responsibility behind those moments. Sometimes the most important choice is the one you don't make, the words you don't say, the stage you don't return to until the timing is right." That's where power resides. The audience listened, captivated. Critics praised his words as a masterclass in restraint, grace, and leadership. Fans flooded social media, sharing quotes and video clips of his speech. The narrative had shifted completely. Denzel wasn't a viral meltdown. He was a role model for handling pressure with dignity. Backstage after the panel, Lisa handed him a note. "Look," she said, "the trending hashtags aren't about drama anymore. They're about integrity." Denzel glanced at his phone. Denzel stands strong. Integrity over noise. Master of composure. He smiled. "Let the noise fade," he said. "The story that matters is the one we carry with us, in our work, our words, and our choices." That night, as the city lights shimmered outside his apartment, Denzel reflected on the week's whirlwind. The live walkout, the viral frenzy, the divided opinions, it had all been part of the journey. But what remained wasn't controversy. What remained was respect, impact, and the undeniable reminder that standing firm could create lasting influence. He poured himself a final cup of coffee and leaned back, content. The storm had passed, the lessons had been learned, and the world now understood the power of integrity over spectacle. And in that quiet triumph, Denzel Washington knew he had turned a fleeting moment into a permanent legacy.